Ladies and gentlemen, today I want to talk about something that each of us faces in our lives, our personal challenges. These challenges are an inevitable part of being human and they can feel heavy, but I want to offer you a different perspective on how we approach these problems. Specifically, I want to explore why sometimes it's not always best to share our personal life problems with just anyone. Now, I want to start by acknowledging something important. Vulnerability is powerful. It's a bridge to connection and it opens us up to the empathy of others. But there is a line between sharing in a healthy, constructive way and unloading so much that we lose ourselves in the process. And often we cross that line unknowingly. The first thing we need to realize is the impact of emotional overload. When we share too much of our burdens with others, it doesn't just affect us, it affects them too. Think about it. How many times have you found yourself emotionally drained after listening to someone else's problems for hours on end? It doesn't just drain the one who shares, it can also put strain on relationships, leaving both parties exhausted. Now, I'm not saying we should bottle everything up inside, but I want to emphasize that there is power in processing our emotions privately or in a space where we can reflect without needing validation from others. When we take the time to sit with our emotions and understand them, we develop a deeper understanding of ourselves and we create emotional resilience. That resilience, my friends, is what helps us navigate life's storms instead of waiting for someone else to give us a life raft. And speaking of validation, let's talk about a pattern many of us fall into. When we're overwhelmed by our personal issues, it's natural to seek comfort and reassurance from others. We want someone to tell us that everything will be okay or that we're not alone. But here's the thing, seeking reassurance instead of true advice can make us less confident in our own ability to resolve problems. The more we lean on others for validation, the less we trust ourselves. This brings us to the concept of self-reliance. If there's one thing that can truly empower us, it's knowing that we have the strength within to handle our challenges. It may not always feel easy, but through introspection, journaling, or meditation, we can find the answers we need. This doesn't mean we should never seek advice, but it does mean we have to trust ourselves more. When we do, we build emotional strength. And then there's the power of privacy. When we share personal struggles with others, especially with those who aren't close to us or haven't earned our trust, we risk opening ourselves up to judgment. Privacy allows us to preserve our dignity, our integrity, and our sense of control over our own story. The more we share indiscriminately, the more we dilute our own sovereignty. That being said, there is a time and a place for vulnerability. It's important to share your feelings and challenges, but only with those who have earned the right to hold that space for you. These are the people who will listen without judgment, offer guidance when necessary, and respect your boundaries. So let me leave you with this in life. We all face hard times. But we have a choice. We can choose to lean into self-reliance, process our emotions with grace, and create strong boundaries to protect our hearts. When we do, we build emotional strength, resilience, and empowerment. And most importantly, we show up as our most authentic selves in the world. I encourage you to embrace that inner strength. Protect your heart and choose wisely where and with whom you share your deepest challenges. And always trust in your ability to navigate life's hurdles. You are stronger than you think. We often hear that vulnerability is a sign of strength, that it's the gateway to deeper connection and understanding. But there's a nuance to vulnerability that's important to recognize. Vulnerability is powerful, but only when it's balanced with boundaries. It's easy to get caught up in the idea that being open means sharing everything, that by exposing our deepest struggles, we create space for others to understand and support us. And while this can be true, we also need to remember that our emotional well-being is precious and it requires protection. Vulnerability without boundaries can lead to emotional exhaustion, or worse, it can open us up to judgment or advice that we don't need or want. Setting boundaries around what we share isn't about building walls. It's about understanding that there's strength in knowing when to keep certain parts of our lives private and when to open up. It's about honoring our emotions and our needs and recognizing that sharing everything doesn't always serve us in the way we think it will. In fact, sometimes it's more powerful to hold space for ourselves, to sit with our emotions, to reflect and process instead of immediately seeking to unburden ourselves on anyone who will listen. There's a delicate balance between opening up and protecting our hearts. By creating boundaries, we protect our energy and our emotional space. It's a way of loving and respecting ourselves, and ultimately it enables us to show up in the world more authentically, not because we've shared every aspect of our struggles, but because we've learned to stand in our own strength, knowing when and with whom to share what's most vulnerable. When we find ourselves overwhelmed by life's challenges, there's a natural urge to share what we're going through, to seek relief from the emotional weight we're carrying. It feels like a release, like lifting a burden off our shoulders. And in the moment, it might feel good, like we're sharing our struggles with someone who understands. But what happens when that becomes a pattern? What happens when we make it a habit to offload our emotions onto others without considering the impact it has not just on ourselves, but on the people we're sharing with? Emotional overload doesn't just drain us, it drains the people around us. The more we rely on others to absorb our pain, the less we leave room for them to process their own feelings. We start to create an imbalance where the energy we once shared in a healthy, reciprocal way becomes a one-sided exchange. It's easy to forget that while others may want to listen and offer support, they too have lives, struggles, and emotional needs of their own. And as much as they care, there comes a point where the emotional load can become too much to carry. This emotional exhaustion isn't just about feeling tired, it's about losing the ability to truly connect. When we constantly share our problems, we begin to define our relationships by what we're struggling with, not by who we are as individuals. We risk turning our connections into emotional transactions where we only reach out when we need something. Over time, this can erode the depth of those relationships, making them feel more like obligations than opportunities for genuine connection. So while sharing our burdens can provide temporary relief, it's essential to recognize the toll it can take. We have to be mindful of not overwhelming the people in our lives. The best relationships are built on balance, on mutual understanding, respect, and support. But if we only reach out when we're in crisis, we may unintentionally turn those connections into a lifeline that's unsustainable for both parties. And in doing so, we might lose the very strength and resilience that we seek in the first place. Instead of relying on others to absorb our pain, we have the opportunity to find healthier ways to process it ourselves. By recognizing when we're nearing emotional overload, we give ourselves the chance to pause, reflect, and make space for healing. Because in the end, the most lasting relief doesn't come from offloading our struggles onto others. It comes from learning how to stand firm in our own emotional strength and resilience. There is a deep, often unspoken need for healthy emotional processing, a need that so many of us overlook in the hustle and bustle of daily life. When life gets heavy, it's tempting to pour our feelings out to anyone who will listen, hoping that by speaking the words aloud we'll find release. But here's the truth: while sharing our emotions can be a form of connection, it doesn't always lead to true healing. To heal, we must first learn how to process our emotions in a way that is not only compassionate, but also constructive. Emotions are powerful and they deserve our attention, but all too often we push them aside or externalize them, thinking that if we can just talk about them enough, they'll go away. However, when we don't take the time to sit with our emotions, to really understand what's behind them, we leave ourselves stuck in an endless cycle of reactivity. We become so caught up in what's happening to us that we forget to ask ourselves why we're feeling the way we are or what we need in that moment to truly heal. Healthy emotional processing doesn't mean ignoring our feelings or pretending that everything is fine when it's not. It means creating space to feel, to reflect, and to engage with our emotions in a way that allows us to learn from them rather than just be overwhelmed by them. It's about giving ourselves the time and permission to cry when we need to be angry when we're hurt, and to let ourselves feel fear without letting it dictate our actions. But it's also about creating moments of stillness where we can reflect and ask ourselves, what is this emotion trying to teach me? What do I need to release? And how can I move forward with strength? Not from a place of reactivity, but from a place of wisdom. The need for healthy emotional processing is a reflection of our desire for growth. When we allow ourselves the time to process our feelings internally, we begin to gain insight into ourselves. We start to recognize patterns in our emotional responses, why certain things trigger us, why certain situations make us feel powerless, and why some emotions seem to resurface again and again. This understanding is the gateway to transformation. We can't change what we don't understand, and so we must first turn inward, creating space for that inner work. Without it, we risk continuing to carry the weight of unprocessed emotions, which only compounds our stress and limits our ability to move forward. Emotional processing also teaches us how to take ownership of our feelings. It helps us move from a place of reaction to a place of intentionality. Instead of letting our emotions control us, we learn how to respond in a way that aligns with our values, our goals, and our sense of inner peace. We stop allowing the chaos of the external world to dictate how we feel, and instead we start creating an internal environment of calm and clarity. This isn't about suppressing our emotions, but about giving ourselves permission to truly understand them so that they don't overwhelm us but empower us. True healing comes when we honor our emotions, not by dumping them onto others, but by taking the time to process them with patience and compassion. When we do this, we reclaim our emotional agency. We stop feeling like victims of our circumstances and start taking ownership of our emotional responses. And in doing so, we create the foundation for lasting resilience. Because the more we learn how to process our emotions in healthy ways, the more capable we become of navigating life's challenges without losing ourselves in the process. There is a subtle yet powerful tendency many of us have when we are facing challenges, the desire to seek validation over advice. When we're going through tough times, it's easy to fall into the trap of wanting to hear that we're not alone, that our feelings are justified, or that everything will be okay. We seek reassurance, hoping that someone will tell us the words we long to hear in that moment of pain. And while there's nothing wrong with seeking comfort from others, it's essential to recognize that seeking validation, instead of genuine advice, can hold us back from truly growing and moving forward. When we prioritize validation over advice, we often find ourselves trapped in a loop of reassurance, never really addressing the root of our issues. We become addicted to hearing that we're right, that our struggles are understandable, or that we deserve sympathy. But this kind of external validation can actually disempower us. It shifts our focus away from the internal work we need to do and instead puts us in a position where we are constantly relying on others to tell us what we want to hear. While it may feel comforting in the short term, it ultimately prevents us from developing the emotional maturity and resilience we need to overcome obstacles on our own. In truth, seeking validation over advice often stems from a deeper fear, the fear of not being enough, of feeling misunderstood, or of not having the strength to handle things on our own. But the more we seek external validation, the more we reinforce this fear. We begin to believe that we need others to tell us we're okay because we're not trusting ourselves. And the more we depend on others' validation, the more we erode our own confidence in our ability to navigate difficult situations. What we need, instead of endless validation, is the courage to seek advice that challenges us, that helps us see things from a different perspective, and that offers practical tools for moving forward. Advice is not about telling us what we want to hear, it's about offering insight that encourages us to grow. It's about receiving feedback that pushes us to look beyond our immediate feelings and explore the deeper issues at play. It helps us find new ways of thinking and behaving, empowering us to take action and make changes in our lives. When we ask for advice, we are inviting others to help us see the bigger picture, to offer strategies or wisdom that we may not have considered on our own. Advice forces us to confront our challenges head-on, to take responsibility for our part in the situation, and to look for ways we can transform the obstacles in front of us. Validation, on the other hand, keeps us in the victim mindset where we are waiting for someone to save us rather than learning how to save ourselves. Ultimately, seeking advice over validation is an act of self-respect and self-love. It's an acknowledgement that we are capable of growth and that we don't need to rely on others to tell us we are worthy or capable. We can become our own source of strength and confidence. When we step out of the pattern of seeking external validation and move towards seeking actionable advice, we begin to reclaim our power. We take the reins of our own lives and we empower ourselves to find the solutions we need. By doing so, we not only become better equipped to handle challenges, but we also become more confident in our ability to trust ourselves, and that is a power no one can take from us. There is an incredible strength that comes from relying on ourselves, a strength that we often overlook in the chaos of seeking external support. In a world where it's so easy to turn to others for validation, advice, or reassurance, we often forget just how powerful we are when we lean into our own inner resources. Building self-reliance doesn't mean shutting people out or refusing help. It means learning to trust ourselves, to believe in our own ability to navigate the ups and downs of life, and to stand firm in the face of uncertainty. It's about knowing that no matter what we face, we are enough and we have everything we need within us to move forward. Self-reliance begins with acknowledging that we are the ones who are ultimately responsible for how we handle our emotions, our thoughts, and our reactions. It's recognizing that while support from others can be invaluable, we must first build the inner tools to process, manage, and make sense of our experiences. When we take ownership of our emotional world, we stop waiting for others to fix things for us. Instead, we become the leaders of our own lives. It's not always easy, especially when we've been conditioned to seek external approval or advice, but the more we practice self-reliance, the more empowered we feel. It's a quiet confidence that comes from knowing that no matter how tough things get, we have the capacity to handle them. Emotional strength is the foundation of this self-reliance. It's the ability to feel deeply without being consumed by our emotions. It's knowing that we can experience fear, anger, sadness, and joy and still remain grounded in our sense of self. Building emotional strength requires us to face discomfort, to lean into the difficult emotions instead of running from them. It requires us to acknowledge our pain without allowing it to define us. When we learn to sit with our emotions, when we allow ourselves to truly feel without judgment or resistance, we grow stronger. We teach ourselves that emotions are temporary and that, while they may be intense, they do not control us. One of the most powerful aspects of building self-reliance is the ability to create a relationship with ourselves based on trust. When we trust ourselves, we stop second-guessing our decisions and begin making choices with more clarity and conviction. This trust builds resilience. It's about saying, I may not have all the answers right now, but I trust that I'll find them. It's about stepping into the unknown with the confidence that no matter the outcome, we will grow from the experience. There is an undeniable power in privacy, a power that we often overlook in a world where oversharing has become the norm. We live in a time when it's easy to put our lives on display, to share every detail, every moment, every emotion with others, whether it's on social media or in casual conversations. But what if the true strength lies not in exposing everything, but in keeping certain parts of our lives sacred, in guarding our personal sovereignty as fiercely as we would our most precious possessions? There is a quiet power in choosing what to share and, more importantly, what to keep for ourselves. It's the power of privacy, a power that allows us to maintain our sense of control, our dignity, and our peace. When we make the choice to keep certain things private, we're not shutting others out, we're choosing to honor ourselves. Privacy is a form of self-respect. It's a way of saying, I am not here to seek approval or validation from the outside world. I am enough as I am. It's about understanding that not every part of our story needs to be told. Not every struggle needs to be shared. In fact, there is great strength in the ability to hold some parts of ourselves close, to process our feelings and experiences without feeling the need to explain them to anyone. This doesn't mean we're hiding or being secretive. It means we are choosing to protect our emotional energy and our sense of self from the judgments, expectations, and unsolicited advice that can easily come when we open ourselves up too much. Personal sovereignty, the right to govern our own lives and decisions, is intrinsically tied to this concept of privacy. When we share too much with others, we risk giving away our power, allowing others to have a say in how we feel, how we should react, or what decisions we should make. But when we establish boundaries around our privacy, we take back control. We become the ones who define our own narrative, who decide what to reveal and what to keep sacred. It is in these moments of self-preservation that we reclaim our strength, our agency, and our personal sovereignty. In a world that often asks for more information, more transparency, more connection, it can be incredibly empowering to say, this part of me is mine, and I am choosing to keep it for myself. It's a radical act of self-care and self-empowerment. When we protect our privacy, we protect our peace of mind. We create space to heal, to reflect, and to grow without the pressure of external opinions or influences. We can work through our challenges privately with the knowledge that we don't owe anyone an explanation for how we're feeling or why we're going through what we're going through. Our personal sovereignty allows us to trust that we don't need to justify our existence or our choices to anyone but ourselves. The power of privacy is not just about hiding away or keeping secrets. It's about choosing when and with whom to share our truths. It's about trusting that when we are ready, we will open up to those who have earned the right to hear our stories. Until then, we can stand in the quiet strength of our own sovereignty, knowing that the most important relationship we have is the one with ourselves. And in that space, we have the freedom to heal, to grow, and to become the person we are meant to be without the pressure of seeking approval from anyone else. This is the power of privacy and the deep, unshakable strength of personal sovereignty.